I think that to be a star requires you to be brilliant 24 hours a day. That is something that is not in me. He's known as the Desperate Zorro, the Lonely El Mariachi, the family spy Gregorio Cortez, and the favorite of millions of children, the unsurpassed Puss in Boots. The Spanish actor Antonio Banderas can be called a world star without exaggeration. His cinematic career began in his homeland, but later he set out to conquer the world. But what exactly was his road to Hollywood Olympus? What men did he share a bed with on set? Which 3 women once conquered the heart of the Spanish macho? And what does the actor do now? You'll learn about this and much more in our today's video. So get comfortable, grab yourself something tasty, and check if you've already subscribed to our channel. You're watching Biographer. Let's get started. José Antonio Domínguez Banderas, which is the real name of our hero, was born on August 10, 1960 in the small Spanish town of Malaga. Antonio's mother, Ana Bandera Galago, was a schoolteacher, and his father, José Domínguez Prieto, was a police officer. The family still had a younger son named Francisco.
Our entire family actually
Also,
is
some of the
except my chosen family.
Yes, of course. Yeah, you're married here with
But my
children.
mother and my brother and my cousin. My mother was the youngest of 16 brothers and sisters.
At school, Antonio surprisingly did not like learning English and spent most of the day running around with a ball in the yard. Like any Spanish boy, Banderas dreamed of becoming a football player. The career of a professional athlete seemed to him the only possible and capable one to glorify and provide. His parents were skeptical about these dreams. Such a son's path to fame seemed unreal to them. Of course, Antonio played football well, but not the best. As a teenager, Antonio suffered a serious knee injury, and the career of a football player finally had to be forgotten. For the people of Andalusia, according to Banderas, the only certainty in life was, and remains, death. Everything else is relative. So from childhood, he knew very clearly there is only one life. So he tried to live it as best as possible. He wanted to travel to different places, and he was also curious and interested in everything in the world. That curiosity is the engine that makes me move through life without fear, the star admitted. How did the future star become interested in acting? In 1974, the world-famous musical Hair was staged in the City Theater of Malaga. The production was a great success. There wasn't a single person in the city who didn't hear at least a retelling of this event. Banderas, like all the boys in his surroundings, was never interested in the theater. But the 14-year-old Spanish teenager couldn't help but be interested in the fact that at the end of the first act, the actors went on stage naked. Of course, Antonio ran to the local theater to get tickets. Then the future actor literally fell in love with this play. The story about the boy Claude, who got to know a company of New York hippies and fell in love with a rich and beautiful girl Sheila, impressed Banderas. Nothing like it was shown in Malaga before. Of course, the production in the town was less provocative than in the original version, but that was enough for Antonio, and he immediately wanted to play in the theater. Well, to somehow get closer to all these free and happy hippies. The parents did not approve of such enthusiasm of their son, and their numerous relatives were also not delighted. However, this only incited the teenager more. Either out of internal protest or out of genuine interest, Banderas took a serious interest in dramatic art. In the local theater, they looked at the enthusiasm of the teenager with a smile. Mostly, he had to work there as a handyman. After school, Antonio decided to enter the National School of Dramatic Art, which finally drove his mother crazy, but Banderas didn't care. After all, he was more interested in girls at that time. The glory of a real macho started for Antonio at the age of 15, and since then, the young man is not tired of proving his success. In Spain, it is customary to be proud of your victories in love affairs. So, despite the not very honorable acting craft, Antonio was respected and even admired in Malaga. However, men admired Banderas until their sister, wife, or daughter was in the actor's radar. Then they weren't so happy about it. The girls who passionately fell in love with Antonio after the breakup were somehow not particularly fond of him either. More precisely, they began to hate him as passionately as they loved him. After graduating from drama school, Antonio finally understood it was time to leave the city. There, it was impossible to earn either real success or decent money. Therefore, Banderas went to conquer the capital. I was lucky to be in the capital at that very moment. After Frank's death, there was a boom in art that lasted for several years. It was called La Movida, the movement. New designers, directors, new musicians all appeared. Finally, you could say what you thought, and there was no end to the ideas. In Madrid, no one had heard of Antonio Banderas. The drama school experience did not give him any advantages there. Theater directors looked at him with pity and irony, but it was impossible to return to Malaga. So he had to look for at least some kind of work to get hold of the city. As a result, he got a job as a waiter at one of the capital's restaurants. Such work allowed him to have a relatively free schedule, and what's more pleasant, to get to know Madrid girls. His father, not wanting his son to starve in the capital, constantly sent him money. Not much, because he himself did not earn much, but he never forgot to help Antonio. Later, the star would fondly remember his father. Before he died, he saw me in Hollywood. He saw me on Broadway, and it was very nice to see my father, a very old man, sitting there and smiling. It was a very satisfying thing that he saw his son having success on Broadway. It was very beautiful. Banderas also noted that when his father came to see his play, he felt as if there was no one else in the audience. There were 2,500 people in the theater, but I did the performance just for my father, the actor said. The capital attracted Antonio with its freedom. There, it seemed, no one knew anyone and everyone did what they wanted. And although in Malaga, Antonio was one of the most developed young people, both in terms of fashion and in terms of musical preferences, in Madrid, it became clear to him that something had to be done with his image, and immediately. I thought I was cool because I grew long hair and a mustache, and I was into the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But this was a mess and really cool. A new world in which I was still a stranger. Banderas had some acting experience, and the directors of that time endlessly staged experimental performances. Antonio agreed to everything, and for free. The main thing was to just play. He would choose roles later, so Banderas played in almost all experimental theaters in Madrid. At some point, Antonio again decided to try his luck at the Madrid Drama Theater. The director, who once looked at him with pity, suddenly agreed to take the actor to the troupe. Antonio had been wandering around Madrid in search of success for a long time and simply could not believe his luck. Now, he had a permanent job and a more or less stable income. There was not enough money at all, but still, the need to work as a cellar and waiter disappeared, and this was the main thing. Finally, he got the opportunity not just to play, but to earn money from his favorite business. I don't believe in careers. I just picture myself always as one of those old actors from the 19th century who go from village to village in their repertoire. While working at the Madrid theater, Banderas often spent time with friends in the bar closest to work. One such evening, a very strange-looking man came there.
With a brief, red briefcase, appeared over there, and he just threw a monologue to us. He was very funny, he was very smart, and very ingenious, and for like 20 minutes he was just talking by himself. I don't remember the issue, but I remember laughing with him and stuff like that. And at some point he just stood up just to leave, and he looked at me and he says, you got a very romantic face, you should do movies. And I said, sure, whatever. So he left, and I asked the other actors that were with me, who is this guy? And they said, well, his name is Pedro Almodóvar, and he made one movie, but he will never do another one.
By that time, Pedro Almodóvar had really managed to gain fame as a cult Spanish director thanks to his first feature film, Pepe, Lucy, Bomb. The movie turned out to be very successful, and a year later, Pedro began shooting a new film, Labyrinth of Passion. He searched for an interesting face for a long time and finally found Antonio. A few days later, Pedro offered him to star in a movie. I remember the door of the dressing room opens and that wild, shabby guy enters, the director of The Underground, who was famous for not following any rules. He asks if I want to act in a movie. I say, of course, but what's the movie about? He answers, about a bunch of madmen from Madrid. I thought then that this director is either crazy or a genius. He turned out to be both. Antonio had a very small role in the movie Labyrinth of Passion, for which he received his first film fee of 100,000 pesetas, which is about $650. The film caused a real stir at the premiere. The audience was very bright, and only Antonio came in a suit and tie and felt too official among the motley crazy crowd. The parents were not at all delighted with the film and their son's participation in it. However, the most important thing is that he was noticed. Banderas began acting in everything that he was offered, but the roles continued to be small and the films unknown. Simultaneously, while filming, Banderas relentlessly conquered Madrid women, but the affairs also turned out to be fleeting. A few years later, Almodóvar again remembered Antonio's romantic face and invited him to star in the film Matador. Banderas then got the role of a student matador, Ángel Jiménez. Critics liked the abstract and complex picture very much. Apart from the critics, no one really understood it that way. For Antonio, the role became iconic. He was nominated for the Goya Award for the Best Supporting Role, and Pedro Almodóvar invited the young and promising actor to his new film, Law of Desire. Since this was Banderas and Almodóvar's third collaboration, Antonio more or less adapted to the crazy rhythm of filming, although he was very tired. The director had his vision for every frame, every movement, every word, which he never tired of telling the actors. Every scene had to be worked out to perfection, and it was really exhausting. In the film, Banderas played 20-year-old Antonio Benito's, madly in love with director Pablo Quintero. On the set, everyone was so tired that no one cared who they would have to lie in bed with. The only regret was that it was impossible to fall asleep in the shot. When Pedro offered the actor to star in this film, Banderas was shocked. The parents were not happy about the fact that their 26-year-old son was hanging around Madrid, acting in dubious movies and behaving completely wrong, and then it was absolutely necessary to play passion in bed with a man. I will never forget what Almodóvar gave me. Pedro is one of my guardian angels. When he offered me a role in Law of Desire during which I had to kiss a man, I thought I would die of horror. I kept imagining that the man had a huge mustache. Despite his role, Banderas seemed determined to reacquaint himself with all the girls in Madrid. After 14 hours on the set, he managed to run on a date, fall in love, be disappointed, break up, and fall in love again. And there were several times a week like that. Women changed so often in my bed that I didn't have time to remember their names or faces, the actor said. The filming of Law of Desire ended and it was possible to relax a little. After that, I did not dare to appear at my parents' house for a year, the actor said. The film itself, which premiered in Madrid on February 7, 1987, became the most commercially successful Spanish film at the domestic box office in 1987 and received the largest distribution abroad, as well as numerous awards at numerous film festivals. A new film was already on the horizon, but so far these were only plans. Antonio continued to play in the Drama Theatre of Madrid. As free time increased, he began to visit cafes near the theatre more and more often. There, he saw a beautiful girl who immediately captured his heart. It turned out that her name is Ana Lesa, and she is an actress. At that time, Ana was just starting her acting career and had already managed to appear in a couple of episodes of the miniseries Lorca, Death of a Poet. She was not deprived of male attention, so she did not take Antonio's courtship seriously. However, Banderas was not at all embarrassed by this, and he began courting her. Flowers, chocolates, walks under the moon, getting to know her mother. When it came to getting to know his parents, Ana suddenly realized that everything was really serious. She did not notice how enthusiastic Antonio was, and it seemed that only recently she reluctantly agreed to a first date. Banderas' parents fell in love with Ana at first sight. The actor's mother began to ask him more and more often what he was going to do next, and finally, Antonio firmly announced that he was getting married. The relationship between Antonio and Ana developed very rapidly. A few months later, Banderas simply could not imagine how he could have lived without Ana before. Everything worked out with her immediately. She knew how to organize everything, and everyone liked her. They got married 9 months after they met. They decided to celebrate the ceremony in Madrid. There were numerous relatives of the bride and groom, as well as Pedro Almodóvar and the famous Spanish actress Carmen Maura, who had already become the couple's best friends. Antonio's whole family was delighted with their new daughter-in-law. At the same time, Pedro Almodóvar offered Antonio to star in his new film, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and Banderas advised Ana as well. In Almodóvar's new film, as always, everyone gathered. The main role was played by the unchanging Carmen Maura, who played in almost all of Almodóvar's films, and Banderas and Lesa played minor characters. Antonio called this role one of the most intelligent in his biography. The film in the creepy Spanish style of Almodóvar enchanted everyone. The life plot against the background of unnaturally bright characters and emotionality of Spanish women was liked by everyone. Critics, viewers, and Hollywood. The film received 18 awards and 18 nominations. 5 Goya Awards, Best Screenplay Award at the Venice Film Festival, Best Actress Award at the European Film Festival, etc. But most importantly, the film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. Banderas went to the Oscar ceremony. Hollywood then seemed too noisy and complicated to him. Everything here in Los Angeles is masks, metaphor, unreality, the actor said. Everything is concerned with image. The box office, stars. But what bothered him the most was his complete lack of English knowledge. Rather, in Spain, he thought that he already spoke this language decently, but at the Oscars, it turned out that he did not understand a single word at all. There, at the presentation of this prestigious film award, he saw Melanie Griffith for the first time. The actors crossed paths in the hall. The woman then was very beautiful and wore a white dress. Melanie smiled at everyone and talked to someone all the time. Unlike Banderas, the woman felt like she belonged there. It seemed that she was simply born with an Oscar statuette. He learned from his interlocutor that she was married to another well-known actor at the time, Don Johnson. Melanie was dazzling and beautiful in a white dress with pearls. Then I couldn't even dream about her. It was a strange feeling, to be honest. That involuntary meeting did not end in anything, but the stranger left a deep impression on the Spaniard for a long time. In 1990, Pedro Almodóvar threw a grand party on the occasion of Madonna's arrival in Madrid and invited Banderas there. The fact was that the singer had repeatedly said in her interviews that she loved Almodóvar's films. After learning about this, the director was filled with sincere love for the singer and her work. Madonna, in turn, fell in love with the handsome young man from his films and demanded to meet him. I've had a crush on him for 2 years. He was one of those actors I really wanted to meet. Although there's this one major obstacle that I never really counted on: his wife. Banderas himself was not enthusiastic about the prospect of spending an evening with a pop star, and Pedro had to persuade him for a long time. Finally, he gave up and came to the party. He hardly spoke English, so it was difficult for him to maintain a conversation with Madonna. I remember how she melodiously said, "Antonio," the actor recalled, and I, like an idiot, could not understand half of everything she said at the table. I was not as strong in English then as I am now. I sat next to her and just looked at her. He nodded and smiled all evening and surprisingly agreed to come to the singer's place for dinner after the concert. Actually, I just didn't know what to do with it, Banderas admitted. I had a wife, and to be honest, I was a little afraid of Madonna because she was a very influential woman then, unlike me. I didn't want to become one of her boys, believe it or not. I wanted to gain popularity by myself and not do PR at the expense of famous mistresses. Not coming would be seen as a bad tone by both the singer and Almodóvar, so Antonio decided to pay Madonna a visit with his wife Ana. That took away the ability to speak from the pop diva, since at the time she was filming her documentary, Madonna Truth or Dare, and the camera was following her. It turned out that it was through this movie that Hollywood learned about the handsome Spanish actor, Antonio Banderas. For the film's sake, the actor starred in a production episode after dinner where he said a single phrase: "I'll call." Having calmed down a little from the unpleasant surprise with his wife, Madonna said in an interview, "He didn't call. He's a handsome guy, but there's something wrong with him. He probably has a very small penis. A person cannot have everything perfect, but he's not such a good actor." After this incident, Antonio decided to get out of Almodóvar's influence a little. He loved acting in his films and was infinitely grateful to Pedro for the first role in the film, but could not accept the role of his puppet. The last joint work of Pedro Almodóvar and Antonio Banderas at that time was the film Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Filming ended before Madonna arrived in Spain. If not Almodóvar, then Hollywood. The actor has been drawn there for a long time. He wanted to try to achieve something bigger and engrave his name among world stars. At that time, many Spaniards left to conquer Hollywood, but none could succeed. It was like I was starting all over again, Banderas said about his moving to the United States. I'd been doing leading characters in my country for 5 years. I had done dozens of movies in Spain where, to survive, you have to do a lot of jobs to jump from movie to movie because they pay you so few dollars to do any movie. In Spain, they're proud of me because I'm considered like an international soccer player. I have to win a battle outside so that I can represent my country in a way they are going. Antonio, don't blow it. Released in Spain in January 1990, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down was a huge success, becoming the highest-grossing domestic film of that year, reaching an audience of over 1 million. The film was generally well received by Spanish critics, who called it a haunting, tender love story, with the exceptional nature of the characters. British critics were less positive, describing the film as rather banal, sketchy, and essentially humorless. But in the United States, the film faced opposition from rating agencies and the public due to some frank scenes, and even received an X rating for a, quote, scene of strong adult sensuality with nudity. For more than a year, Antonio Banderas practically did not act, and suddenly he was offered a role in Arnie Glimcher's film The Mambo Kings. He was given an incredible chance. It was hard for Antonio to believe that someone would offer him something valuable, and that's why he didn't learn English very well. Of course, he said, "My name is Antonio," brilliantly, but the other words were more difficult. He understood the language, but speaking was worse. When I had my first interview in London with director Arnie Glimcher, the actor remembered, I only knew 3-4 lines of English to be used at the right moment. The most important was, I can do that. At first, Antonio did not want to go to the States. He was intimidated by huge Hollywood and annoyed by his own lack of English knowledge. Of course, Banderas wanted to play in Hollywood, but sometime later. His mother persuaded the actor to pursue the filming, because he'd been lazy for more than a year and the family did not have enough money. It must be said that she did not care so much about my career, but simply about the money that was offered to me since our family was not rich. But I still thank her for convincing me. I will never forget this film. I still remember my role by heart. Banderas was the last to be cast in the film, so he read with Kevin Kline and Annabella Sciorra, who were going to play his brother and wife. So Arnold sent Antonio to the Berlitz School in New York for a month to study English with a bunch of businessmen from Japan and France. I saw people crying there, like me, because I thought, I am so stupid, I will never learn this language. Banderas joked. A month later, the actors with whom he read were no longer there and were replaced by others. And then the actor had to talk to all the executives of Warner Bros., and according to him, he even forgot Spanish. Nevertheless, for him, it was one of the most wonderful experiences of his life. Poor language knowledge also affected his everyday life. According to The Star, I would get invited to meet with other actors whom I admired to visit their homes. I would feel incapacitated because I couldn't express myself. So, for example, during a joint shooting in a commercial with Sharon Stone, he was afraid to appear stupid because he could not communicate with her normally. He felt the same later, working with Tom Hanks. However, America always impressed the actor because people of different nationalities who spoke different languages lived there. Therefore, despite his very noticeable accent, he did not experience any discrimination. I found that so beautiful, the actor said. I thought this is a project. America has a unified people in a very specific way. Relations with Anna then deteriorated. Banderas did not understand at all why his wife decided to leave her career and take up his promotion. If they had a child, there was nowhere else to go, and yes, Anna believed that she had created Antonio, and what was even more insulting was that everyone around her believed the same. The actor was also very worried about the fact that Anna could not get used to life in the USA. An old friend, Carmen Mora, recommended her to the film The Anonymous Queen, where Anna played a small role. Antonio also tried to do everything for his beloved to find herself. Later, it turned out that Anna could not have children, and for Antonio, it was a real blow. It was a tragedy for her and for me. I could not imagine then and now family happiness without a child, and on a subconscious level, I began to understand that our union was doomed. Although, believe me, I continued to love Annie. In 1993, Banderas was offered to star in the provocative film Philadelphia. The picture became iconic for America. The film was based on real events and became one of the main film projects that raised issues of homosexuality, AIDS, and discrimination. In the film, Antonio got the role of Miguel, Andrew's lover, a lawyer suffering from AIDS, played by Tom Hanks, who bravely endures all life's difficulties. The film turned out to be incredibly sad and difficult. It was shot in an equally difficult atmosphere. The worst was for Tom Hanks, who had to lose 28 pounds. Real people of non-traditional orientation and AIDS patients were taken into the mass. Over the next year, more than 40 people died from this terrible disease. Most of the filming took place in a real courthouse. Of course, all this did not add to the fun on the set. Antonio played the lover of Tom Hanks' character, even starred in a bed scene with the actor, but most of his role was cut during editing. To encourage his wife, Antonio recommended her for a small role in the episode, although she was not mentioned in the credits.
You know something? That stuff is saving your life.
What's the matter with you tonight?
Close the law book.
You just...
Eh?
The film premiere was very strongly received by the Baptist Church. Mass strikes were organized against the showing of the picture. In addition, the family of Geoffrey Bowers sued the film company because the film used his true story. According to relatives, 54 scenes of the film literally copied the life of the infamous young man. Disputes were settled peacefully, and the film itself won 2 Oscars. The society began to talk about the problem of society's perception of people with AIDS, and Antonio Banderas was honored with the unexpected title of Honorary Gay Man of Hollywood. Antonio took this with a smile. "I'm very glad that so many different people are watching me," he said. After Philadelphia, Antonio Banderas starred in Gianluigi Calderon's television miniseries Benito, The Rise and Fall of Mussolini. He got the role of the progenitor of fascism, named Benito Mussolini. The film told about the youth of Benito when he was still proclaiming freedom, equality, and fraternity. In the film about Mussolini, Banderas proved that he was not just a good-looking Spaniard, but also his 1976 book of the same name. The book, in turn, was reworked by the writer from her early story. The film earned 2 BAFTA awards, 3 MTV Movie Awards, and 2 Oscar nominations. By the way, the film was nominated for the MTV Award for the Best Act in the nomination Worst Acting Duo, according to the version of the Golden Raspberry Award. Follow. In the same 1994, Banderas starred in the Argentinian-American film Of Love and Shadows. The movie was about Chile during the Pinochet era. A love story in the atmosphere of a dictatorial regime has passed the notice of film critics. One of the roles was played by Antonio's wife, Ana Lesa. Banderas really wanted her to find herself in the United States to prove herself as an actress. Even when he acted in a small role, he tried to promote Ana everywhere, but she saw herself more in the family and, more importantly, in Spain. It was very difficult for her to live in two countries. Antonio continued to shoot in some crazy mode. Later, he would find his director and be able to choose roles, but at that time, he needed to work, and the more the better. In total, 6 films with Antonio Banderas in the lead role were released in 1995. Miami Rhapsody, Never Talk to Strangers, 4 Rooms, 2 is Too Much, Assassins, and Desperado. 3 of them completely changed his life. On January 27, 1995, the premiere of the comedy Miami Rhapsody took place with Antonio Banderas and Sarah Jessica Parker in the lead roles. The light romantic comedy for a mostly female audience had an average rating, but filming was a pleasure. Cheerful Sarah Jessica Parker as a partner and strict but calm director David Frankel gave Antonio some orderliness and stability. In life at that time, everything seemed so shaky and uncomfortable, and on the set, Antonio was literally reborn as a groom in love. After shooting Miami Rhapsody, Robert Rodriguez invited Antonio to star in his movie. The film 4 Rooms was a comedy project of 4 novellas which were shot by 4 different directors. All the stories take place in the rooms of the same hotel. The stories are connected to each other with the help of one central character, Ted the Bellhop, performed by Tim Roth. All the directors who participated in the project also acted as screenwriters of comedic stories. The uniqueness of the film was that it was directed by Allison Anders, Alexander Rockwell, Robert Rodriguez, and Quentin Tarantino. Antonio played the role of a Mexican gangster in Rodriguez's plotline. This story parodied numerous movies about naughty children. Working on 4 Rooms was complete madness. Here you could see a cool blockbuster, a simple story with a happy ending, an action movie, and an existential story with a dead end. To top it all off, one of the stories in 4 Rooms featured Madonna. The movie 4 Rooms consisted entirely of strange interweaving of plots and literary quotations. The completely crazy film has caused a lot of positive reviews from critics.
We're going to have fun tonight? I didn't think so.
After filming, Rodriguez and Tarantino were already best friends. Rodriguez then proved himself well, and the television studio contracted him to continue his story about the musician El Mariachi. The film starred Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas. Quentin Tarantino, having learned about this, wanted to star with Rodriguez in his new film, El Pistolero. The producers did not like the name El Pistolero, and the film was renamed Desperado. It was released even earlier than 4 Rooms on August 25, 1995, and 4 Rooms debuted only in September of the same year. Steve Buscemi played a character named Buscemi, a friend of El Mariachi, while Quentin Tarantino played the pickup guy. With a budget of $7 million, the film grossed $25 million, and Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek instantly became famous. The plot of the picture revolves around the musician El Mariachi, who takes revenge for the murder of his beloved and calls himself El Desperado. One of the side effects of making this film on a very small budget was that most of the stunts had to be done by the actors themselves, so they got a lot of bruises. In addition, there was no CGI then, and the explosions in the frame were also real. I remember the smell of, burnt hair. My hair, Salma's hair, and everybody that was behind the camera's hair, the actor recalled. In general, it's not necessary to explain why the film was such a success. Antonio's musical talents played a significant role in this. Back in Spain, Banderas learned to play the guitar a little and volunteered to perform all the songs himself, but Tarantino helped with the musical arrangement.
Ay, 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 mi amor, ay, mi morena de mi corazón.
On the set, Hayek and Banderas were on purely friendly terms. However, the couple turned out to be so beautiful that the not-so-famous actors literally hypnotized the entire film crew. When the bed scene was filmed, many people gathered on the set to see it. After Desperado, Banderas was approved for the film Never Talk to Strangers. It was actually a joint Canadian-American-German project. Peter Hall's film was not particularly successful among the mass audience. I was never worried about a career. the actor recalled. I never thought I had to be very careful about my next choice because I had to preserve the type of actor that people perceive me to be, because then you're not free anymore. The thriller about the police psychologist Sarah Taylor, who suffers from a split personality, did not receive any prizes or awards, but it justified its budget. Out of the $6.5 million invested, the film grossed $6,858,000 at the American box office. The movie received generally negative reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film received a 15% with an average rating of 3.6 out of 10. Critics were merciless, noting, quote, "Never talk to strangers, and never make the mistake of believing this silly stalker mystery is the best available viewing option." On December 1st, 1995, the film 2 is Too Much was released. It became very iconic for the Spanish actor because it was on the set of this movie that Antonio Banderas met Melanie Griffith. The first thing he asked me was my age. I said, "That is the rudest thing anyone has asked me first." The first meeting was not very successful, but Antonio did not even think of giving up. On the contrary, he set himself the goal of winning the heart of a cold beauty by the end of filming. The opportunity came the same evening when Melanie was sitting alone on the steps of the trailer and trying to figure out what to do next with her life and her husband, Don Johnson, whose behavior lately had been far from ideal. Drunkards, endless affairs with other women, constant betrayals. Antonio, seeing her upset on the stairs, gave her his jacket and also brought coffee and donuts. They talked all evening and really liked each other. However, Melanie's husband obviously felt something because he began to appear on set to support his wife. He saw that she often communicated with a Spanish colleague, and he did not like it. Once, Don even came to the shooting in a state of heavy alcohol intoxication. He began to bother Melanie, insult her, trying to kiss her at the same time. Griffith tried to wriggle out of his man's arms. This angered Don, and he violently grabbed Melanie's arm. Antonio couldn't stand this. He walked up to Don, punched him, and dragged him off the set. Another guest during the filming was Annalisa, who came to see Banderas. This time, an unpleasant surprise was waiting for Melanie. However, the actors in love already felt that their marriages would soon come to an end. They no longer hid their feelings in public and decided that it would be easier if their partners found out about the affair from the headlines. Griffith was worried about only one thing: how Antonio would get along with her children, 11-year-old Alexander and 5-year-old Dakota. But he was calm about their presence in the life of his beloved and considered them his own. "I liked everything about her. We laughed a lot, joked, talked about life," Banderas recalled. "I felt that I could not do without her. I loved watching her play with her kids, and I often thought about the fact that we too may have a child." The film, 2 is Too Much, was not particularly successful at the box office. For some reason, the audience did not like the cozy romantic comedy with the participation of Antonio Banderas, Melanie Griffith, and Daryl Hannah. The slightly grotesque film was more reminiscent of a good play than a romantic film. It was met with mixed reviews. Melanie was unlucky the most. She was nominated for the Golden Raspberry Award in 1996 in the category Worst Female Role in the Cinema. During the filming of the comedy, Melanie's mother, Tippi Hedren, divorced her third husband, businessman Louis Béranger. This inspired Melanie. If mom was not afraid to be alone at 65, then what should 38-year-old Melanie worry about? So she packed up her stuff and left Don. Antonio was over the moon with happiness. Melanie was by his side, and there was nothing more important in the world than that. The actor could not muster up the courage to talk frankly with his wife. He hoped that she would understand everything herself and simply leave him, proudly and without a scandal. But it did not happen as expected. Banderas was then busy filming Assassins with Sylvester Stallone. Sean Connery and Michael Douglas also auditioned for the role that went to Stallone, but Stallone got it in the end. The actors quickly got along and often sat in the hotel bar. It happened the same day when Annalisa burst into the lobby. The porter managed to warn Antonio in advance, and Banderas hurried to Melanie, who also lived in this hotel. The scandal, which Antonio's wife dragged him into, bypassed all American newspapers at the time. Goblets, plates, and cutlery were flying around. They did not remain friends after that incident. Anna returned home, humiliated and offended. Spain took the break with Anna as a personal affront. Banderas was afraid to even think about coming to his native country because he really wanted to introduce Melanie to her parents. Anna endlessly gave angry interviews in which she simply trampled on Melanie Griffith, calling her an old woman with a bunch of children and husbands. Thank God Melanie was not interested in the Spanish press. She had enough of unpleasant articles in American newspapers. The Assassins movie was released on October 6, 1995, even before 2 is Too Much premiered. The action movie with the participation of Banderas and Stallone could not fail by definition. On a budget of $50 million, it grossed $83 million. Thus, 1995 became decisive in the career and personal life of one of the most beautiful and brightest couples in Hollywood. Ana didn't give Antonio a divorce in the hope that Banderas would come to his senses and return to her, and Antonio at that time was offered to star in one of the brightest pictures of the century, in the film Evita. His partner on the set was Madonna. Throughout the filming, she joked about Antonio's male inferiority 5 times a day, but he steadfastly withstood this test. And although the role of Madonna was more important and she was many times more popular, it did not matter to Banderas. He focused on filming, and then Melanie and the children were waiting for him. At the same time, he found out that he would soon become a father. Therefore, he hastened to propose to his beloved and heard the long-awaited yes. Simultaneously with filming, Antonio dealt with his divorce. Finally, in April 1996, he received official divorce papers. A month later, on May 14, 1996, Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith got married. The ceremony was very modest. They just put their signatures and that's it. There were only a few mutual friends at the party. The fact that Griffith and Banderas got married immediately became known to journalists, and everywhere there were photos of Melanie in a lush wedding dress and Antonio Banderas in a Spanish suit with long black hair and a neck scarf over his shirt. The newlyweds had terribly gloomy faces. It would have been nothing, but it was shot from the movie Two is Too Much, and the real wedding photos from the real wedding never appeared in the press. It was rumored that Melanie sewed her own outfit, but it's not known whether it was actually so. At that time, film after film with the participation of Banderas began to be released in the American box office. It was simply impossible not to fall in love with this handsome Spaniard. And then everyone found out that he married Griffith. Of course, the press poured dirt on the actress. Journalists lied about their age difference. In one article, Antonio turned out to be 7 years younger than Melanie Griffith. In another, it was a 12-year difference. In fact, Melanie Griffith was born on August 9, 1957, and Antonio Banderas was born on August 10, 1960. So their age difference was just 3 years and 1 day. Besides, Antonio was included in the list of the 50 most handsome men on the planet, according to People magazine. The actor did not get tired of publicly confessing his love to his wife, but the more he talked about his love for Melanie, the more journalists hated her. On September 24, 1996, Stella del Carmen Banderas Griffith was born. Antonio just couldn't believe his luck and always asked Melanie if she needed anything. It was the longest day of my life. I just couldn't believe I was going to be a father. In the morning, I woke up and first of all ran to the cradle to check if it was a dream. A few months later, in December 1996, the world premiere of the musical Evita took place, starring Madonna and Antonio Banderas. The film became a cult classic. The composer was none other than Andrew Lloyd Webber. The director was Alan Parker. With a budget of $55 million, the film grossed $147 million at the worldwide box office. Madonna and the image of the First Lady of Argentina, Eva Perón, broke all records for the number of outfit changes for a film. Before the premiere of Evita, the record for changing outfits belonged to Elizabeth Taylor and the film Cleopatra, where she changed clothes 65 times. In Evita, Madonna wore 85 outfits. Oscar for the Best Song, You Must Love Me, 3 Golden Globes for Best Comedy, Best Song, and Best Actress. The film, about the most complex and ambiguous woman of Argentina, Eva Perón, immediately became the most famous musical of our time. Antonio played the role of Commander Che in the film. Because of Madonna, Banderas was somehow not even noticed. Antonio plunged headlong into family life. He loved Melanie and the children. To introduce them to their parents, Banderas took them all to Spain. Melanie was met there so aggressively that the dislike of Hollywood journalists no longer seemed so cruel. Here, Annalisa was considered an abandoned and unhappy woman, and Melanie Griffith was her complete opposite. The actress was already very worried about her age, and then there were those stupid jokes in the press and endless questions from passers-by about how old she was. Antonio's hometown, however, liked Melanie. The actor's mother reconciled with the American wife and was friendly. She convinced her daughter-in-law that speculations about her age were just nonsense, and Antonio's parents considered her to be 5 years younger than him. Banderas sincerely enjoyed his native Spain. While working in Hollywood, he often came to his hometown, but only then he had free time. In Los Angeles, there was a huge pile of scripts waiting for him, and he could afford to choose what he liked. Then he thought about the fact that it was time to buy a small vineyard so that in the evenings of his 70s, he could sit with Melanie and with a glass of his own wine and admire the sunset. However, after returning to Los Angeles, everything started anew. Journalists, scandalous articles, and Melanie's depression. Meanwhile, in 1997, Antonio Banderas was offered to star in the film The Mask of Zorro.
There was actually, the offer was made to me by Steven Spielberg. It was a very interesting night. It was on the night of the Oscar, I think it was 1997. And it was a beautiful magic night, actually, because Tom Hanks won an Oscar for Philadelphia. I gave, I think, an Oscar to Bruce Springsteen. We all gathered later on, I think it was at the Elton John's party. Elton John was at the table. Wow. There were Oscars on the table.
In fact, Antonio immediately agreed and considered it an honor to play such an iconic character. The film was approved, but there was a problem with the director. Initially, the project was offered to Robert Rodriguez, but the budget of $47 million did not inspire the director. I can repeat to you what he told me on the phone. The actor recalled, "Antonio, I cannot make this film with such a budget, and since the studio is not going to give me more money, I'm leaving." I told him, "Do you want me to leave the project too?" To which he replied, "No, this story seems to have been written for you." Later, the budget was almost doubled, but Martin Campbell directed the film. For several months, Banderas trained in fencing and horse riding. The film studio representatives were amazed by the fact that the Spaniard does not know how to jump out of the window directly onto a horse. Apparently, it was all because of stereotypes about Spaniards. For the first time, the bet in the film was made on Antonio Banderas. And for the actor, this film meant a lot. Never before was the role written specifically for him. In fact, millions of dollars of the budget were invested in him. Well, in Anthony Hopkins too, of course.
I miss my brother, sir.
Your brother is dead. We lose the ones we love. We cannot change it. Put it aside.
How? How can I do what is needed when all I feel is hate?
Zorro is a folkloric character, something like Robin Hood. The image of Zorro gained particular popularity at the beginning of the 20th century, and films about him were at the dawn of cinema. In total, there are more than 30 films about the defender of the weak and oppressed. The Mask of Zorro is about how Don Diego de la Vega, aka Zorro, played by Anthony Hopkins, decides to raise a worthy successor and pass on his skills as a warrior. It was a real honor for Banderas to work with such a great actor. The film not only justified itself, but also broke all records. No one expected that The Mask of Zorro would gross $250 million at the global box office. As shown by the studies carried out by the studio, the film attracted any audience: women, men, teenagers, older generations. It was somewhat reminiscent of a good old Western, which began as a tragedy and then became a romantic comedy with an epic ending. The film was shot in Mexico against the background of endless desert and giant cacti. Melanie stayed in Los Angeles. She continued to be offered roles for those over 40. A visit to a plastic surgeon did not yield any results. Everyone knew perfectly well how old she was. Melanie still corrected her nose, which made Antonio very angry. Gradually, a crack in their love started growing. Antonio Banderas suddenly had the idea to make his own film, in which, of course, Melanie Griffith was to play the main role. At first, Melanie was afraid of how they would communicate on set, but Antonio gently and persistently, daily and nightly, persuaded her of this idea. In the end, Melanie agreed, and they began shooting the movie Crazy in Alabama. Antonio made this film based on the book by Mark Childress, the rights to which were bought by the production company Green Moon, owned by the Banderas Griffiths. This was their first project, which intersected several stories about people living in Alabama in 1965 during the Civil Rights Movement. The film Crazy in Alabama really doesn't have any genre with which its creator agrees. "I can't call it a comedy, and I can't define the genre of my film yet," Banderas said. Melanie played the main role in the film and looked charming in the frame. "Antonio knows how to control his emotions much better than me," the actress admitted. "I can explode at any moment. He's much calmer, which is exactly what I need from a director. Besides, he knows me very well, and if I didn't give 100%, he told me about it right away." There are hints of Almodóvar and Rodriguez in Banderas' film, but overall, it's just a very talented film. The main character's children in the film were her real daughters, Dakota and Stella. Critics did not like the picture at all. Melanie, who in 1999 was again nominated as Worst Actress at the Golden Raspberry Film Award, was hit as usual. Crazy in Alabama also failed at the box office. Only $2 million in the US against a budget of $15 million. The problem was that the film had no genre. Those who wanted to see a comedy were disappointed by the tragic plot. Those who went to the social drama did not understand the author's intention. However, the most important thing was that Melanie was happy. Melanie and I understood that working together is a risk, but I admired her talent as an actress even before I fell in love with her as a woman, and I know very well how insecure all actors are, and even more so how insecure Melanie is at times, but I wanted to film her in the role she deserved. Besides, it made our relationship spicier. To prove to the whole world the sincerity of her feelings for her husband, Melanie got a tattoo on her arm with his name inside a big heart. Antonio was delighted by such a romantic gesture of his beloved. On October 18, 2000, a new star appeared on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. Antonio Banderas received it for his contribution to the development of the film industry. Antonio came to the opening ceremony with Melanie, Stella, and Dakota. They had fun and posed for a very long time. Antonio even danced on his own star. In 2001, Robert Rodriguez released the film Spy Kids. In it, Antonio played the not-so-young spy Gregorio Cortez and immediately became a favorite of all the children of the world. In the film, his character wears the same mustache that his character in 4 Rooms, and there was an explanation for this.
I mean, we started with this mustache. I did it for myself when we did 4 Rooms. And actually, Robert Rodriguez, who is the director of the movie, thought that we should develop this character more.
In the same year, Banderas played Father Matt Gutierrez in the thriller The Body. After that, he was offered a star in the movie Original Sin. His partner in this picture was Angelina Jolie. Filming took place in Mexico. The number of scenes in bed there was off the charts, and although most of them were cut out in the final version, the film was still categorized as over 17. Of course, because of it, rumors about Jolie and Banderas' romance appeared in the press, and Melanie was not so happy about it. She threw wild tantrums and again ran to the plastic surgeon. She always had very thin skin, and any interventions by surgeons were very difficult for the actress. Painkillers were eventually replaced by alcohol. And in the end, Antonio got really fed up with all this and he gave his wife an ultimatum. No more plastic surgeries. Otherwise, divorce. Later, he admitted in an interview that he was so cruel because he wanted Melanie to finally get rid of this bad hobby. He was simply afraid for her life and was not going to divorce her under any circumstances. Why sit on painkillers after operations if, for me, she's still the most beautiful and the most desirable? The actor said. On July 11, 2001, there was the premiere of the film Original Sin with Antonio Banderas and Angelina Jolie in the lead roles. The working title for Original Sin was The Beautiful and Romantic Dancers in the Dark, by analogy with the novel Waltz into Darkness. A film was made based on this novel, but what was the producer's surprise when at the same time Lars von Trier's film Dancer in the Dark was released about a blind woman sentenced to death? The movie title had to be changed urgently. Despite all the predictions and despite the star duo of Jolie and Banderas, the picture did not live up to expectations. After Original Sin, Banderas was offered to star in the continuation of Spy Kids. Antonio had no idea that a funny family film would be such a success, but he gladly agreed to star in the sequel. Simply because it was Rodriguez. Robert likes to combine ideas, change scenery, but it's always the same Rodriguez. Banderas said, "We've known each other for a long time. We almost don't need to talk anymore. I can see where my boundaries of what is allowed on set pass. Although sometimes I see actors who almost cry because sometimes Robert can act very cold-blooded." Antonio took Stella to the sequel, Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams. The film caused mixed feelings in the girl. After all, she suddenly saw that her dad had other children. He had to explain to his daughter that he was only pretending, and the entire screen family was not real. She thought I was living a double life. Banderas laughed, quote, that the children on the screen are mine. After that, my daughter told the people sitting next to us throughout the film, Dad is just pretending, just pretending. She wanted to clarify the situation for everyone.
I know this hair thing is one of my weakest points. We're gonna get it. You're gonna look cool. In fact, you're looking cool already. Like me. Like Papi.
A month after the release of the sequel to Spy Kids, Antonio was invited to take part in a photo shoot for the magazine, and he agreed without thinking twice. The actor was generally famous for his friendly attitude towards journalists and photographers. On the set, it was assumed that Banderas would be surrounded by half-naked models. Antonio told Melanie about it. At first, she was tense, but then she still let her husband go to this event. Of course, she called him several times to check on the situation. Living with Don Johnson taught Melanie to always be alert. While talking on the phone with her husband, she heard that one of the models was asking him if she liked the bra. Not even half an hour had passed when Melanie was on the set chasing away half-naked girls from her Antonio. In 2001, Rodriguez finally began shooting the last part of the trilogy about El Mariachi. This time, the film was called Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Chaos reigned on set. George Clooney, for whom the role of Sands was written, could not take part in the film. Rodriguez wanted to invite Bruce Willis or Sean Penn, but Johnny Depp volunteered to play. Filming has already begun, and it turned out that the props, precisely a truck with weapons, were detained at customs. They had to use plastic toys, which made all the actors laugh. Furthermore, Tarantino could not participate in the project because he was shooting Kill Bill. It was Quentin who persuaded Rodriguez to finally finish the trilogy about El Mariachi. He even suggested the title to Rodriguez, remembering Robert's love for Once Upon a Time in America with De Niro. By the way, De Niro was also Banderas' favorite actor. In one of the interviews, Antonio admitted that he was very nervous when he was in the same room with Robert.
I'm in a room with him, I get very nervous.
You can't talk?
No, I don't know what to say to him. And every time that I meet with him, he behaves actually very nicely.
But let's return to the film. Robert wrote the role for Quentin Tarantino and even negotiated a fee. Rodriguez always paid Tarantino a fee, exactly $1. However, Tarantino paid Rodriguez the same. Danny Trejo was cast in the role of Tarantino, but the misfortunes did not end there. Salma Hayek, who played in the film Frida, did not have time anywhere, and the shooting days had to be arranged so that the actress had time to act in 2 films at once. Banderas also appeared in Frida as artist David Alfaro Siqueiros. His entire role consisted of only a few episodes. The actor explained his participation in the film as follows. It's just that Salma Hayek played the main role there, and she's very persistent. She told me every day, play Siqueiros, play Siqueiros. I told her, okay, there will be little money, there will be little money. I said, okay again. After filming Desperado 2, Rodriguez was so exhausted that when new editing difficulties arose, he decided to postpone work on the picture, and the film Once Upon a Time in Mexico was released only on August 27, 2003. The director at that time had already managed to shoot and release Spy Kids 3D Game Over. In the same 2003, Christopher Hampton's drama Imagining Argentina and Bruce Beresford's film and starring Pancho Villa himself were released, which told about the Mexican Revolutionary. The slogan of the Pancho Villa film was Lights, Camera, Action, Revolution. Antonio decided that it was time to think about serious cinema. He could already afford to choose roles and participate in interesting projects not because of money or fame. It was necessary to remind people that he was a serious actor and not just a Spanish macho. Then, Antonio agreed to Brian De Palma's thriller Femme Fatale. Filming took place in Paris. In the role of the femme fatale, De Palma saw Uma Thurman and none other than her, but the actress suddenly refused to participate in the project due to pregnancy. So it was decided to approve Rebecca Romijn for the main role. The film premiere took place in April 2002. During the release, the film received mixed reviews. It received a 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the website's consensus of critics saying, "The thriller Femme Fatale is overheated, nonsensical, and silly." In 2003, Antonio Banderas was offered the main role in the musical 9 from Federico Fellini's autobiographical film 8½. Banderas had no idea how a film about a writer's creative crisis could be turned into a musical. Melanie then stunned him with the fact that this musical had already been staged in the 1980s, and that it was wildly successful. Banderas was very fond of singing and even recorded his own disc. Besides, he often independently performed all the songs required by the plot and films. Therefore, he gladly agreed to a new project. At the same time, Melanie was offered the role of Roxy in another popular Broadway musical, Chicago. So the spouses performed simultaneously. Every night after the musical, they returned home, tired, but very happy. Antonio never took care of his voice and continued to smoke, although much less. Once, women from his fan club came to the actor's performance in the front rows. They just went crazy seeing their idol, and the actor had to literally run away from them after the show. You all call me the honorary gay of Hollywood, but believe me, it's not the worst thing. When 150 women from my fan club came in, I didn't know if I was going to make it out alive. However, Banderas did not forget about his wife. He often made surprises for his beloved. Once he bought tickets to Paris for just one day to spend the night in the most romantic capital of the world. Another time, the couple went on vacation to Hawaii, where Antonio presented Melanie with a diamond necklace woven into a beautiful flower necklace that he had made himself. The pair of Banderas and Griffith did not fit into any of the templates accepted in Hollywood, and it really annoyed everyone around them. Everyone wanted to stuff them into one of the scenarios they fit in, but since they didn't fit in anywhere, once a week some magazines separated them. Antonio himself enjoyed having the best of the best by his side. Not only that, she was jealous of him for everyone, and this supported his male ego. Melanie's son, Alexander, had already grown up by that time. He was about to turn 20. Dakota was 14 and she was wearing makeup and going on dates. The girl showed interest in the acting profession, and Antonio did not know whether to be happy about it or not. Stella was also growing fast. The actor often took the girl to the movies, but it was still too early for Stella to go to movies with his participation. So the actor decided to try himself in the genre of family cinema. It was then that Antonio was offered to voice Puss in Boots in the cartoon Shrek 2. Banderas agreed without hesitation, and there were 3 serious reasons for that. Firstly, Antonio considered himself a true fan of the first Shrek, which he watched at least 10 times. He was sure that this was a masterpiece of animated cinema, and he received his Oscar quite deservedly. Secondly, when Banderas first came to the US in the early 90s, he didn't speak English at all, and the fact that he was invited not just to ask, but to voice one of the main characters in a big-budget Hollywood blockbuster gave him a sense of self-respect.
I'm very shy when I speak English. I
beautiful.
am very, very shy. I am totally conscious of my accent, and because I am living now in Spain, when I come back here to New York.
A little bit.
Well, thirdly, the actor noted, except for the movie series Spy Kids, I practically don't act in movies that I could take my daughter Stella to the premieres of. She'll be 8 years old in September of this year, and by the way, she's also crazy about Shrek. The animated film broke all records at the worldwide box office. $920 million was unprecedented. Banderas loved the first part of Shrek, which he took Stella to see, so he agreed to voice the new character in the sequel.
What do you reckon we should do with him?
I say we take the sword and neuter him right here. Give him the Bob Barker treatment.
Oh, madre, no, por favor. Please, I implore you. It was nothing personal, senor. I was doing it only for my family. My mother, she's sick, and my father lives off their garbage.
Subsequently, he would perform this role in the cartoons Shrek the Third, Shrek Forever After, and 2 parts of Puss in Boots. In the early years, Banderas was very happy that he was adored by children all over the world, but soon, Puss in Boots overshadowed all his other characters and roles. I hate that cat. Ever since he appeared in my life, he's more important than me. Now women always say, "Oh, I love that cat, he's so cute." They love the cat, and they hate me. In 2005, the film company did not approve the continuation of The Legend of Zorro. It was talked about for so long that no one believed that it would ever be shot. The actors' spouses arrived in Mexico together. Despite many hours of filming, Antonio and Melanie remembered those days as the most fun of their vacation. Mexico reminded Banderas a little of Spain. Melanie just loved the fun atmosphere she associated with the homeland of cacti and tequila. Griffith did not appear in the film, but to everyone's surprise, worked in the stable. All summer in Mexico, I received the most ridiculous fee in my life. $25 a day, the actress recalled, smiling. So what? Firstly, we were together, and secondly, I really like horses. The premiere of The Legend of Zorro took place in October 2005, and the film itself grossed $141 million. But when the actor was later asked if there would be more sequels to this legendary franchise, he replied,
I'm getting older, man.
Come on, man. Look at you. You're vibrant, you're young, you've got the accent.
Yeah, but I'm going to be 50 this year, and I have to use glasses now. I have to take my teeth at night and stuff like that.
Antonio and Melanie began to come to Spain more and more often, and Banderas was already thinking seriously about buying a vineyard. Antonio again became interested in directing, and in 2006 presented the film called Summer Rain to the audience. This is a return to one's roots, a secret statement about the years of youth spent in the native Malaga in the golden 70s. The film participated in the Berlin Film Festival and received only positive reviews. Critics praised Banderas' real directional skill and even called Summer Rain intellectual erotica. A cute coming-of-age story of 3 Spanish boys was filmed not for the box office, not for rental, but just like that, just for Spain, where Antonio was adored. He reciprocated Spain. After all, everyone has already come to terms with the fact that Antonio loves Melanie and will always love her no matter what happens. Summer Rain is a film about a very kind person who had a happy childhood and who really wants to share their happiness. From his childhood, Banderas took not only the inspiration to create such films, but also the role model from his parents. He recalled that discipline prevailed in the family. However, with his children, he decided to focus more on talking and showing affection. I think that way you can understand your children a lot better. The actor said, quote, "In Stella's case, we've had an easy ride, but now she's entering a new stage. I've had experience with my other children, Alexander and Dakota, but they both suffered. It's the hormones." Banderas also noted that, quote, "Discipline which kids don't understand properly leads them to distance themselves even faster and more radically. Having said that, I don't believe in being their friend. You've got to go gently, but you've got to go carefully." It's interesting that Antonio always emphasized in his interviews that he has 3 children, and although Dakota and Alexander are Melanie's children, he repeatedly said that he considered them his own children, and when he spoke about them, he called them my children, not my stepchildren. At that time, Banderas was most worried about the difficulties that might befall them on their life path. After all, the children of stars face not only the advantages, but also the disadvantages of public life. As for his youngest daughter and her boyfriends, he always jokes, quote, "I hope she doesn't end up with the kind of scallywag I was at 20. I'm always teasing, I'll put my Zorro suit on and that will teach him." In 2007, the star couple went to a ski resort. Melanie was never particularly fond of skiing, but decided to try herself in a new role. Antonio was not busy with anything except voicing Shrek and could afford to spend more time with his family. That wonderful family trip ended with Melanie falling seriously and injuring her knee. She was only prescribed painkillers at the resort. However, after returning to Los Angeles, Griffith consulted other doctors and new problems with the leg appeared. She had to do 3 operations. Painkillers removed the pain, but at the same time they were addictive. Alcohol was also added to this. As a result, Melanie passed out at one of the parties. Antonio came there and took her home. Since then, the actress realized that she had an addiction and her husband was there to support her in a difficult time, and Melanie really started to struggle. Moreover, Banderas influenced it not as much as her children, and especially Dakota. It was she who insisted that her mother start treatment. Alexander also supported his sister. They started going to a family psychotherapist together and sent Melanie to rehab. Griffith's recovery process was very difficult for everyone. Antonio tried to surround Melanie with all possible care and love to turn her life into a real fairy tale. He acted less, refused interesting offers to spend almost all the time with his wife. In 2008, Banderas lost his father, so they often began to visit his mother in Spain and spend time in his native Malaga. During one such visit to Spain in 2009, Antonio was suddenly offered to buy a vineyard. Without thinking long, as it has been his dream for a long time, Banderas signed the papers to buy 51% of the shares of the small winery and 230 hectares of vineyard, which by the terms of the purchase was now called Anta Banderas. Meanwhile, Melanie was at the bottom. I wanted him to go with me to doctor's appointments or to Alcoholics Anonymous, but that wasn't his thing at all. Addiction entered my life, but not his. I have nothing against the man, but I would like him to do more for me. Together with Antonio, Melanie went to a course of group therapy for people suffering from various kinds of addictions. At first, Antonio and Melanie felt very strange in this company. The first few sessions were difficult for both of them. However, at the 5th session, there was a noticeable change in the actress's consciousness. Melanie suddenly decided that she would fight no matter what, and that was already half the battle. "We have as many problems in our family as others," said Banderas, "and we never hid from them. In Melanie's case, we talked openly about addiction. In the end, we coped with all the problems." Antonio increasingly thought about moving from Los Angeles, preferably to Spain or possibly New York. The giant metropolis seemed to the actor much less fake than Los Angeles. At the same time, Alexander started his business and opened a bar selling fresh juices with his friends. Dakota worked as a model, and Stella studied at school. He and Stella generally had a kind of tradition. Every week, no matter how busy Antonio was, they went to sports matches together or just had dinner together. We talk, spend time together. We want our relationships within the family not to stand still. It's fun. Such traditions helped Banderas make up for lost time with his daughter. After all, when she was very young, he was not at her birthday parties because he was working in Argentina, then in Italy, then somewhere else. The best production I've ever done in my life is my daughter, but it's the one I haven't been able to take care of completely. That is something I will always carry with me, the actor notes. In 2011, Antonio suddenly got a call from Pedro Almodóvar, who offered him to star in his new film. 20 years have passed since Antonio starred in Almodóvar's film Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Banderas gladly accepted the role and went to Spain. Back in 2002, Almodóvar became interested in a book that accidentally caught his eye. It was Thierry Jonquet's Tarantula. He suddenly saw how this story should be filmed, and he saw the main character of this film in Banderas. Then he somehow did not dare to film, and no money was found for the project, so the film was shot only in 2011. Almodóvar was used to working with proven actors. He fell in love with people once, and for all films at once. Almodóvar fell in love with Penelope Cruz in 2006, and starring with the film The Return, always starred her in his works. He also saw Penelope as the main female character of the film, but the more the director thought about the picture, the more blurred the image of Penelope as a toy that came to life seemed to him. In addition, Penelope Cruz was offered a star in Pirates of the Caribbean, so as a result, the role of the main character was given to the Spanish actress Elena Anaya. Almodóvar remained exacting and categorical. "I don't improvise with Pedro," the actor said. Quote, "Subsequently, I developed a rather complex technique trying to introduce my ideas to his films. With Pedro, you always have to make any suggestions carefully. For example, wait a long time for the right moment. There was no chaos on the set, like with Rodriguez. Only work until complete exhaustion and memorizing the text to the last comma. Either way, it was a homecoming. Spain has not changed for Banderas. It was just as warm and sunny. They filmed mainly in Madrid and the vicinity of Toledo. Banderas, of course, often came to his native Malaga, where he was literally adored. In 2010, Antonio Banderas was even awarded the title of professor at the University of Malaga. The picture, The Skin I Live In, was shown to the world at the Cannes Film Festival and was met with mixed reviews. The fact is that everyone wanted to see the usual Almodóvar, that is, something bright, noisy, and very Spanish. The Skin I Live In was practically devoid of colors and emotions. Classic European cinema with an interesting and complex plot was liked by everyone except Almodóvar fans. Banderas had to say this about his role. "It seems that for the first time I do not smile on the screen and play a cold and dispassionate person. But my character is not a doctor who created a monster. Rather, he considers himself a god because he creates a new life, or rather a new form of life. His invention, the skin, is an organ designed to preserve a human personality." After the film release, Banderas again began to be bombarded with questions about how well he got used to the role and how similar he was to this character. When he played El Mariachi, the studio simply did not believe that he could not ride a horse and shoot a gun. When he played Zorro, he was imagined to be so fearless. Even when he voiced Puss in Boots, he was asked how he got used to the role. Antonio initially joked that he walked on rooftops and sniffed valerian. And after a couple of articles appeared in the tabloids about how Banderas sniffed valerian in the evenings, he just stopped joking around. "I have nothing from this cold character who wears a mask and lives by his strict rules," explained the actor. "I am not such a methodical person. I don't know how to hide my emotions. You can immediately see what I'm thinking about." At the same time, Melanie was diagnosed with skin cancer in the initial stage. She underwent surgery to remove it, and the paparazzi were quick to attribute the bruise under her right eye to Banderas' fist. They had to go to the press with an official statement about the surgical intervention. While Melanie was being treated, Antonio went to the Cannes Film Festival in 2012 without her. There, he remembered his youth and danced with the star of Indian cinema, Malika Sherawat. Of course, the press spread this news along with the video proof all over the world, again spreading the topic of divorce from Griffith. Melanie caused a scandal to her husband as soon as he arrived home. She took off her engagement ring and went on vacation to Hawaii. Despite everything, Melanie decided to take care of herself on vacation. Upon arrival, she was unrecognizable. No plastics, just rest, spa, and ocean. It was as if she'd become 10 years younger and Antonio had fallen in love again. Using all his strength and all his charm, he still reconciled with Melanie. Banderas began to tell every Hollywood journalist with new enthusiasm about how much he loved Melanie, and they decided to go to all events from now on only together. "A long life together gives an advantage," said Melanie. "You know perfectly well what your loved one expects from you, so you have to do something completely unexpected that has never happened in your relationship and that they've never even thought about." Surprising each other has become a kind of hobby for spouses. A trip from Antonio, a trip from Melanie, a $200,000 plus black diamond ring from Antonio, Pablo Picasso paintings from Melanie. Banderas then thought of sending his wife a bouquet of flowers a day, each of which contained one line of the poem, and on February 14th, Banderas read the entire poem. Melanie had to surprise her husband no less, and she went to striptease classes in order to dance for him later. Antonio arranged a romantic fairy tale in Venice. Melanie gave Antonio a Porsche, which she packed herself. "I wasted 20 rolls of shiny paper," the actress recalled. Crawled along the floor of the car, wrapping the wheels, climbed the stairs to carefully wrap the roof. Antonio's surprised face when he couldn't understand what he was seeing was the best reward. "It's so fun to surprise each other," Banderas added. In 2013, Antonio reunited with Pedro Almodóvar to star in his film I'm So Excited. The actor returned the director from the period of thrillers to the favorite genre of comedy. Antonio also continued to be friends with Rodriguez and starred in a small role in the sequel Machete Kills. He also teamed up with Stallone again, this time to play Matador in his cult franchise, The Expendables 3 by Patrick Hughes. In addition to cinema, the actor finally and irreversibly became interested in winemaking. But not only winemaking captured the actor's heart. The star was also working with the E-Culf brand on an ecological clothing line. He also released a new line of Antonio Banderas fragrances. The fact is that since 1997, Banderas has been cooperating with the Puig brand, which produces these perfumes. In the first years of Eau de Toilette production, the line was limited to a few women's and men's fragrances, but later the range expanded. There are 22 Banderas fragrances on the market, 13 for men and 9 for women. I don't just want to give my name and image to something, he says. I like to put the work in. I go to the perfumers and they've taught me they are artists. It's so interesting. I like to learn and to do. In 2014, the world was shaken by the news. One of the most stable couples in Hollywood is divorcing after 18 years of marriage. The initiator was Melanie Griffith, referring to irreconcilable differences. Through their representative, the exes said in a statement about their breakup, "We have thoughtfully and consensually decided to finalize our almost 20 years of marriage in a loving and friendly manner, honoring and respecting each other, our family and friends, and the beautiful time we have spent together." Despite this, at the end of the relationship, the former couple worked together on the post-apocalyptic film Automata. During an interview with Ola, Banderas commented on filming together during that period of their personal lives. "It's curious because Melanie and I met as actors, and then for the 20 years of our relationship, we didn't shoot together," he said. "Then, at the end of our relationship, we're back together again on the screen." The actor also noted that their character's on-screen relationship in the film was similar to real-life relationships at the time. "There's a very curious thing in the movie which I realized when I first saw it," he reflected. "At the end, there's a moment where she tells me goodbye, Jacques Valken, and I say, goodbye, Cleo. And that somehow is the close of our relationship." In December 2015, the actor's divorce process was finally completed. According to court documents, the former couple split the artwork and their income from the films which were released between 2004 and 2014. They also agreed that Griffith would receive $65,000 in monthly child support from her ex-husband and ownership of their home in Aspen, Colorado. Each of the actors went through a divorce in their own way. Melanie admitted, although she was embarrassed, she was happy because she had the moral support of her own children. "Life is moving on," said Griffith. Despite this, she was not going to marry again because she did not consider it appropriate. Banderas spoke warmly of his ex-wife in all interviews. "Even if we are divorced, she is my family, and I will love her until the day I die. We've been in contact all these years, and we managed to do a separation that is very elegant." The actor also added, "Our kids are enjoying that, and that's very important for both of us. Our kids are priority number one." The actor chose intensive work to avoid sad thoughts and therefore took on various projects. "I love her very much," Banderas confessed. "Some people consider a separation a failure, and some people don't take that failure very well. They point fingers, and from there everything breaks down. We decided not to bury 20 years of our lives because we've been through a lot together." So in 2015, with his participation, the adventure cartoon The SpongeBob Movie Sponge Out of Water was released, based on the very popular cartoon series SpongeBob SquarePants. In it, Banderas plays the role of a pirate named Burger Beard who gets hold of a magical book that has the power to make any text written in it real. Of course, the project was very successful at the box office, grossing more than $325 million against a budget of $74 million. Reviews were also very positive, although some criticized the inserts with Banderas, considering them not very appropriate.
Is that all you got?
In the same year, the actor appeared in the diametrically opposite project, Patricia Regan's biographical drama, The 33. The film is based on the true events of the 2010 Copiapo mine disaster, in which 33 miners were trapped in the San Jose mine in Chile for 69 days. Banderas appeared in the film in the image of one of the miners, Mario Sepulveda. The film received mixed reviews and was not very successful at the box office. And also in 2015, Banderas plunged headlong into a new relationship. This time, his girlfriend was model, entrepreneur, and investment management expert Nicole Kemple. The couple met at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014. Later, in numerous interviews, Antonio explained that his girlfriend had nothing to do with his breakup with Griffith. Nicole was not the motive of my divorce. He said, I met her at the Cannes Film Festival last year, but we both knew where we were. I was still a married man, although things were already heading the way they have now ended up. And also added, Nicole told me, you've got to solve your problems first, then we'll see. So there's no direct connection to my breakup with another woman. It's not like that. Banderas noted that they only started dating after he signed the divorce papers. Having decided to take a little break from filming, Antonio returned to school again. This time, not the usual one, but the prestigious Central St. Martin's Art School in London. There, the actor studied men's clothing with tutors and learned to cut and sew. His classmates were very calm about such a celebrity in their class. They didn't bother Antonio and didn't ask for autographs and selfies, mainly because they would have been more impressed by the presence of an international designer like Yohji Yamamoto. In addition, it turned out that Antonio Banderas did not attend classes normally, but took an individual course designed especially for him. Mr. Banderas approached us via arts.com, said the director of the school, Mrs. Walters, and we agreed to meet him to discuss his specific needs. Pretty quickly, we realized that doing one of the normal courses offered from the catalog would not be right for him. So then we had to decide whether we could do a bespoke course that would work for everyone, staff too. Although Mrs. Walters was very impressed with Antonio's perseverance, calling him an exceptional individual who's eager to learn, she would not like to host more celebrities. And the school refused many celebrities who also wanted to study at one of the most prestigious fashion schools. This is very much a one-off, and it has only worked because of his personality and attitude. One can imagine any amount of mindless, vacant celebrities who might come along and say they would love to study fashion at Central St. Martin's, but it just wouldn't work, Director Walters noted. As for Antonio, he was genuinely interested in learning and gaining proper knowledge about the fashion industry. It's been repeatedly noted that he is extremely serious about what he wants to do and is a very creative person. In addition, Banderas bought a house in Great Britain in the same year and wanted to equip a design studio there. The following year, the selected brand announced a joint project with Antonio Banderas, and the actor presented a line of men's clothing of his own designer development, complementing it with his signature perfume. And in 2017, Banderas suffered a heart attack. This happened 2 years after his divorce. I was coming out of my divorce and was confused, he said. Quote, it was just doing a lot of things. I'm protecting myself and finding sanctuary in work, making movies one behind the other. It was crazy. Banderas said he saw what happened as a wake-up call that he was on the wrong path. So when I stopped, I came out of this horse of adrenaline is when my heart said, pow, stop it. It's not the way. So, do what you want to do. It is one of the best things that happened to me because it made me react to the life that I was living at the time. The actor confessed, everything unimportant sunk, and only the important things stayed on the surface of my life, such as my family, friends, and my vocation as an actor. So I changed my path completely. The actor noted that it was his beloved Nicole who saved his life then. She had a headache the day before, and they went to the pharmacy to buy pills. The next morning, when I started having the symptoms and I clearly knew what was going on, she put one of those aspirins under my tongue, and that saved my life, Banderas shared. So I had a second chance, and some stuff changed in my life since then. Later that year, the actor announced the sad news of his mother's death. It also affected his general moral and physical condition. However, despite all the troubles, Antonio reassessed his values and finally understood what would make him happy in life. What I wanted to do is to go back to the beginning, the actor noted. Reset. My reset took me to hometown. I bought a theater, which I have now, and I'm having a blast. In 2019, Banderas actually founded the Teatro del Soho musical theater troupe and opened the Teatro del Soho Caixa Bank in Malaga. Since opening, Teatro del Soho has staged the critically acclaimed musical A Chorus Line, Godspell, and Company. Success is just do what you want to do in the way you want to do it, and that is exactly what I'm doing right now in my life, and I feel very healthy. Before we go to the last topic about our today's star, we want to ask you to subscribe to our channel. If you haven't already, like this video and also press the notification bell so you don't miss new biographies. We try to create quality and interesting content, so you definitely won't regret it. Done? Then let's continue. Banderas is a very versatile person with a wide range of interests. He's a supporter of the Spanish Socialist Party, a fan of the Malaga soccer team, and the owner of a motorcycle racing club. Since 2018, the Hollywood star appears in 3 to 5 films a year. He took part in the work on the documentary project Genius, which tells about the life of Pablo Picasso. The role of the Cubism author was brilliantly performed by Banderas himself, and the series itself was nominated for an Emmy Award in 2017. The following year, Antonio starred in the film Pain and Glory, written and directed by Pedro Almodóvar. Banderas played Salvador Mayo, a gay filmmaker struggling with professional and medical challenges in the Spanish-language drama. For the director himself, his script became a kind of revelation, an attempt to tell his story. He's just doing this thing of revealing himself and confessing things through cinema, the actor noted. Almodóvar also drew on Banderas' experience after his heart attack and asked him to use those feelings for his role. The role of Salvador earned Banderas the Best Actor award at Cannes in May. It was not difficult to play a gay man, especially for Almodóvar, who had already filmed his favorite in this role. The phenomenon of gay for pay, when heterosexual actors are more likely to be cast as gay than actual representatives of the LGBT community, is a controversial issue in Hollywood. When the actor was asked what he thought about it, Banderas said that he, quote, always tried to be very respectful to the gay community. I'm an actor, Antonio stated. I just play the character and try to believe them completely when I'm doing them. I try not to perform them, I try to live them. But, I'm not Zorro either. I've never been heroic. I run away. In the same year, another film with the Spanish star The Laundromat appeared on the Netflix streaming platform. It's an American comedy drama directed by Steven Soderbergh, based on Jake Bernstein's book about the Panama Papers scandal, The Secret World. In addition to Banderas, the film starred Meryl Streep, Gary Oldman, David Schwimmer, Sharon Stone, and others. Despite the stellar cast, the film received mixed reviews from critics and caused several international scandals. First, the film was criticized for the use of brownface, which had Streep in the minor role of a Panamanian woman named Elena. Soderbergh recognized the controversy of such a move, but believed that in the story context, the double role was justified, and also emphasized other rules for the comedic portrayal of certain events. Just to calm some critics, weeks after a limited theatrical release and just 2 days before its scheduled premiere on Netflix, two partners of the law firm Mossack Fonseca, Jürgen Mossack and Ramon Fonseca, who were played by Oldman and Banderas in the film, sued on Netflix for defaming and portraying them in a negative light in an attempt to block the movie release. In December, the U.S. District Court judge dismissed their lawsuit based on the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, namely, freedom of speech. Panama's Vice President, Jose Gabriel, in turn promised that Panama would do everything in its power to fix the country's image around the world. The following year, Banderas starred in the Spanish-language black comedy drama Official Competition alongside Penelope Cruz and Oscar Martinez. The film received positive reviews from critics, and the film itself was recognized as the best comedy at the 10th Faros Awards. Banderas did not forget about Hollywood, and appeared in secondary roles in two successful blockbusters, Uncharted and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And he returned to voicing his Puss in Boots in the sequel about his hero, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And no matter how much the actor dislikes the fact that this cat takes all his fame, the numbers at the box office speak for themselves. The cartoon became the 10th highest grossing film of 2022, grossing just under $500 million worldwide. Besides, it received critical acclaim, praise for the story, animation, and voice acting.
Wishing star is in here somewhere. Kitty, may I please see the map?
No.
Serious?
In 2023, the actor played one of the main roles, the villain King Herod, in the new film Journey to Bethlehem, a musical retelling of the story of Jesus' birth. Interestingly, the actor's audition took place without his knowledge. At that time, he was playing in Stephen Sondheim's company in Madrid when the director and music director of the film came to him. They brought with them a device for determining the pitch of notes, and after the performance, they simply approached the actor and said, "Okay, do you want to do the movie? Because we now know that you can do it." So a couple of weeks later, Banderas was already recording songs in a studio in Spain. The actor was delighted with the film plot. "I loved the end of the story," said Banderas. "I loved the way that it was told. When I read the script, I thought, I'll get this opportunity here for me to play a villain that actually can make people laugh." He also noted that such a musical interpretation would focus on love and would not be so dramatic and sad. The actor is sure that the funny film about the biblical story of Christmas will appeal to viewers of any age. In this confusing world where everything is very sad and complicated, according to the star, we want more positive things on the big screens. "If I have kids that are 4 or 5 years old," Antonio continued, "I want to go to the movies and have a good time with them, have some popcorn and laugh, and at the same time, be bathed by this story that's been eternal." The actor also noted that the most important thing for him in the film and in life is love. "If you just take that, that is what religion is for me," he added. In one of the interviews, Banderas said that faith was important in his life, but he also wanted to be critical of himself and his beliefs. I just want to go along on what I think is good, not only for me, but for the world in which I am living. And that is the word love. There's nothing outside of that word. I mean, that's what creates everything. Well, we see that the actor's life has improved after all. He's the most famous Spanish actor in Hollywood, has a fortune of millions, does his favorite work, and does not forget to experiment. He has a beloved woman, and he's maintained an excellent relationship with his ex-wife. What else is needed for happiness? For us, only more films with this talented actor. And that's all for today. Subscribe to our channel and like this video. And if you want to immerse yourself in the life of another celebrity, click on the icon that appeared on your screen. You were watching the Biographer channel. See you in the next video. Till next time.